You know, one thing about these canoes is they really, when you get them to speed, if you take your paddles out, they really coast. There's a lot of movement that you can get for a really long time. And you know, so there's something to that, especially if you're moving with the tide, getting the thing up to speed and actually just pulling out and letting it go, because it's remarkable how long you can coast in one of these canoes. They're very efficient in how they move through the water.
How long would it take to make a canoe this size? Ballpark?
A couple of weeks, I don't know. For somebody really working. With the big canoes, we say it's a month worth of work for a good crew carving, maybe 3 months, maybe 3 months worth of work for a single person working. And that's our own experience and actually sort of the record that has been left to us. So, you know, there's some work in this canoe here, for sure, a few weeks worth of work at least. And that's like, you know, when our ancestors worked, especially, I mean, they worked. The canoe makers, there were two kinds of canoe makers, one that carved in town and one that carved in the woods. The guys that carved, you know, and I mean, it's just different sensibilities. Some people would find drift logs or get logs, try to get logs in the water and bring them to where they live. Other people just worked in the woods. And the guys that, I mean, you know, when they're working in the woods, they abstain from sex. I mean, you name it for canoe carving. There's a lot of taboos about canoe carving, and it made them work fast. No, but you know, they would work sun up to sundown. Wouldn't comb their hair around their canoes. You know, a lot of different taboos about how you behave and what you do. And so, you know, it inspired long days. Those guys worked sun up to sundown.
Archaeologists surveying forests, I think at Vancouver Island, maybe also in Washington, I'm not sure, have found canoes in the process, abandoned, but in the process of being carved. They go by it, and I think it was a nurse tree with something growing out of it, and then they look at it from another angle, they would realize that it was the hull that was being worked out. It was probably upside down. They were looking at it. I couldn't get the photographs for this, but I saw one presentation where they found 3 or 4 of them, which were still, for whatever reason, in the process of being roughed out and then totally abandoned.
There was one on the Nema up here that we know about. That,
had stuff going out of it?
Well, that was, yeah, just a canoe hull that had been roughed out. I think a certain amount of that we've assumed was the epidemics.
Yeah, I would assume so.
Maybe it was a check to talk to the builders ahead of that.
I mean, certainly possible. Yeah, no doubt. I mean, there could have been something technically that they just walked away from, but there seemed to be a lot of stuff just left because people were dying. And the diseases were so bad at one moment.
Well, thanks for.
I was excited you were talking about it.
So, I think we have 5, I'm not sure. I think on Katie's schedule we have 5 minutes.
I have one question.
Well, thanks for indulging me.
The canoe outside is red inside and black outside. Can you explain the purpose and how it's done?
That's the traditional color color scheme. There were some different modifications, different details that might be added here or there. But it's like bows were painted actually similarly. They were supposed to be red bellies and black backs. And why exactly, I guess I can't say. The black is from the burning, and you only need to burn the outside. So all that black's established by the nature of burning it and then oiling it. The red is a ochre, always a red ochre from like an iron oxide, and just bound with some kind of oil or whatever, different ways of binding it. But that's just really traditional. That canoe out there is an inch-for-inch model of the canoe that is at the Oregon Historical Society. So that canoe that's at the Oregon Historical Society in Portland was owned by the Scarborough family just across the river here. So they were from Scarborough Head, Chinook Point, basically that's where they lived. The Scarboroughs have lived between Cathlamet and that area forever. But that canoe was a Chinook-owned, really beautiful, fantastic canoe. That canoe is up there. And, you know, that canoe again out here is exact. It's dead 48-inch beam, 24-foot long. We even measured the center of gravity on the one up there to you know, to really make sure we were able to mimic it.
Jody, when you oil it, how often do you oil it? Historically, what kind of oil did you use?
I mean, they were using, you know, like mammal oil mostly, you know, seal oil. You know, dogfish were gathered for other reasons, and dogfish have a really great oil in them. But, you know, whale oil, seal oil, sea lion oil, that's the stuff you could get in big quantities and would work well.
And how often?
You know, I think from what we've heard is that, and Tony Lucier did say this, I mean, this is actually something I heard from the elder, was that once a year that they were dead dried out, pulled out of the water and dead dried out for maintenance. And you know, he was hearing this from other people. I mean, Tony's thinking I mean, he saw canoes certainly, but he didn't. You know, it's not like he's not old enough to be living when everything was old. So, but he, you know, he had a lot. He was raised by his grandparents in a lot of ways, and his grandparents had first-hand stories of the first ships in the Columbia River. I mean, a lot of really interesting information. And so, and there were certain things like that that he just clearly had been told and wanted to pass on. So he gave me a really good description of like how to make our fishing nets with seal bladder floats and some of the stuff that was associated with them. And the time thing seemed to matter to whoever was telling him and mom, whatever, because he said about fishing nets, you know, he spent like 3 months making a net, and within like 2 weeks it was basically shot. You know, so they'd work all through in preparation for spring, and the materials used and the fish were so big, and who knows what that they, you know.
It'd probably be like the talk earlier, if you heard it about all the snags and logs being brought down, that was a real problem for nets because they would catch on the logs and whatnot. So.
Were those nets nettle?
Stinging nettle.
Yeah.
Stinging nettle, olive rope. He said, this is his description, stinging nettle fiber for the mesh, cedar bark rope for the lead line and the cork line, stone sinkers, and seal bladder floats. He said you could carve, there were some people that carved floats, like maybe every so often you'd have one that was powered up or something, yeah. But that seal bladders were the typical float for a net in his description.
Well,
5 minutes, sir.
And if people don't know her, this is Pat Courtney Golden's husband, by the way, and Pat's a very well-known basket maker of Chinookan descent from Warm Springs, from the Wasco community, Wigna. But anyway, someone we're always happy to see, a very accomplished artist.
She'll be in Portland October 17th. Is that for the next revisioning?
Yeah. We'll be talking about baskets related to the single basket that was excavated at Soviet Island roughly 700 years ago. Don't miss it.
so on October 17th at the Native American Center issue. Thank you all.